Now, I'm sure many of you know what went down in June this year. If you don't know, here's a quick summary of it.
Many men wish death upon me. Blood in my eye, dog, and I can't see.
As you can tell, a lot of people are happy, and then a lot of people aren't happy. You know, what's new, you know? You got some people who just can't agree on anything, and that's why it went to the Supreme Court in June, you know, and it was struck down, as you know. And I'm not gonna lie, it probably made getting into college a heck of a lot easier for me, considering like my socioeconomic status. And yeah, let's get into it. First and foremost, I need to give y'all some background on this. You know, I'm gonna give y'all a text wall right here. Just joking, I don't do text walls. I'm just gonna say what I need to say to get that A. That rhymes. Anyway, let's get to it for real. Affirmative action is the policy in which institutions are allowed to discriminate upon race to promote diversity. It is a type of social justice. On March 6th, 1961, affirmative action was brought in an executive order to promote higher education to minority groups. And you may be wondering, who signed that order? It was none other than quite possibly the most charismatic president of them all, JFK. Now, JFK signed that in as an executive order, which meant that they had little to no resistance. But for over 62 years, affirmative action has been a fixture of the college admissions process. The order worked as intended, but to an extent nobody saw coming. As time pressed onward and the application pool grew larger and more diverse, it was called into question whether or not affirmative action was necessary, as it came from, you know, Beatles mania to McCarthyism to, you know, that whole 1960s. Times change. Like many other decisions that find their way to the Supreme Court, nobody can truly agree on this, if it's a positive or negative, because it benefits and puts into a disadvantage different communities. So take that with a grain of salt. Being closely tied to race, it has become a touchy subject, and few care or even shoulder the burden of talking about it in a closed-minded society. With cancel culture running amok, there's no other way besides civil talks within person to get your point across, because you might be touted as racist or closed-minded by your peers. Social justice refers to the fair and equitable distribution of resources, opportunities, and privileges within society, with the goal of addressing and rectifying systematic inequalities and historical injustices. It encompasses the pursuit of equal rights, opportunities, and treatment for all individuals regardless of their background, identity, or social status. Social justice initiatives seek to eliminate discrimination, promote inclusivity, and ensure that all members of a community have same access to the same fundamental rights, no matter who you are, what you believe in, what your background is. Basically, it extends beyond institutional barriers and prejudices. Advocates of social justice emphasize the importance of creating conditions that empower marginalized communities. When I talk about landmark decisions going forward, I'm referring to those that were reviewed and ruled upon by the Supreme Court. This is an important thing to keep in mind, because the role of said court is to analyze and set standards upon important cases like Brown v. Board of Education and Plessy versus Ferguson. So when I say landmark case or landmark decision, I want you to keep your ears and eyes open on the screen. Thank you. Gratz v. Bollinger. Gratz v. Bollinger was a landmark case decided by the United States Supreme Court in 2003. The case challenged the University of Michigan's undergraduate admissions policy, which awarded a specific number of points to applicants based on their race. The plaintiff, Jennifer Gratz, argued that the policy violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, by implementing a quota-like system. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Gratz, citing since there were quotas, that would mean that they were obviously trying to disregard the 14th Amendment. Fisher versus the University of Texas at Austin. Abigail Fisher, a white applicant, challenged the university's admissions policy, claiming it violated an equal protection clause also in the 14th Amendment, quite similarly to Gratz. The university used a holistic admissions process consisting of various factors, including race, to achieve diversity. In 2013, the Supreme Court sent it back to a lower court for it to be heavily scrutinized and processed. It came back up in 2016, and it returned in a 4-3 decision. The court upheld the University of Texas's decision on the matter. Supporters for affirmative action argue that it is a necessary policy to address historical and systematic inequalities faced by underrepresented groups. Proponents contend that affirmative action promotes diversity, which has educational and societal benefits. Research indicates that diverse learning environments enhance critical thinking, creativity, and problem solving. A study of the American Council of Education found, on average, people were more open to discussion and less argumentative with different groups of people in attendance, broadening worldviews. Like Woodward, when you spend a lot of time around different communities, you break down stereotypes that may be instilled upon you by your parents. Now, thankfully this has not happened to me, and I'm in an open-minded household, but I can see from other schools in the surrounding area where some people just don't have that luxury that Woodward has of having that whole community around Metro Atlanta, so I'm thankful for that. Shout out Dr. Merrill. Critics of affirmative action argue that it can perpetuate discrimination by considering race or gender in the decision-making process. They think that merit-based principles should take precedence over demographic considerations, asserting that affirmative action can result in reverse discrimination. Critics argue that individuals may be unfairly advantaged or disadvantaged based on their race, potentially undermining the idea of truly a meritocracy when it comes to the college application process. Just to catch your breath, and let's review that Gratz v. Bullinger and Fisher versus UT Austin, or University of Texas Austin, are remarkably similar cases to each other. Both have to deal with the 14th Amendment in the same section of the 14th Amendment, and both are landmark in the Supreme Court, but one was ruled in favor and one was ruled against. And it just depends on the time and social structure within not only the case, because each case is unique, but also within the time you bring it in. Because in 2003, Gratz got her way, but in 2013 and subsequently 2016, Fisher was not so lucky. And the advent of social justice is relatively old in context of the issue, as we've discussed with the 1960s. In conclusion, affirmative action has the potential to help and hurt individuals' chances of getting admitted into certain institutions. There's no denying the amount of good it has done for first-generation applicants and downtrodden peoples. However, one cannot look at the good without examining the bad. In an ever-changing, diverse world, each and every person should have equal opportunity, not only at the finish line, but along the way as well. If said institutions continue to turn human beings into numbers instead of evaluating character, then it speaks volumes on what society prioritizes as a whole. Thank you.